Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here, and today I'm going to be doing a video not about the NBA or the MLB, but actually today about the National Football League. So, as many of you may or may not know, the NFL will be starting up soon here in a couple of days. On Thursday is the first official regular season game. I haven't really talked about it on this channel before, but along with basketball and baseball, football is my other main interest as far as sports go. So I decided I'm going to do a two-part NFL season preview. In this first video, I'm going to be talking about the regular season and basically how I think each division will shake out, what I think the order of the teams will be, how each team will finish. I'm not going to make record predictions because I just think that there's so few games, and if one game I mispredict, I basically have to look at a ton of other teams and how that would affect them, because one game can be such a big difference in the NFL. So I'm not going to give like specific predictions as in I predict this team will win 9 games, but I might give a range, like I think this team will win between 10 to 12 games or something like that. So that'll be the focus of this first video. And the second video I'm going to talk about what my predictions for the playoffs and who I think will eventually be the Super Bowl champion, and then I will go through who I think will win the various awards for the season, like MVP, Offensive Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, etc., etc. So yeah, that's a little preview of what everything's going to go on in these two videos, but let's get going with the first part of this video, which is looking at the AFC first, and the first division I have up is the AFC North. I'd say the team that should probably change the most in this division from the previous year is the Cleveland Browns. A lot of people have been talking about how they think that they will be 11-5 or 12-4. I don't see that personally. I see them being better, but not a playoff team by any means. So here I'll give my order for how I think they'll shake out. I think the Steelers will be number 1. I think they'll have probably between 11 to 12 wins this year. Like a good year, but probably not the best record in the NFL or anything. Just another solid year of winning the division. Next, I think the Ravens will be in second place at about 9-7 or 10-6, depending on how injuries go and how some of their new acquisitions at wide receiver go. They essentially have a pretty similar team to last year, except they swapped out Jeremy Maclin for Michael Crabtree at wide receiver, and they got a few small pieces here and there. I don't think that Lamar Jackson will play that much this year, in my opinion. I do like that they kept Robert Griffin on the roster, because I think, you know, if one of the other between Jackson or Flacco went down, then they would only have one guy and no backup. So I like it when teams have 3 quarterbacks on the roster. So I like that they kept him around. I think Jackson will be good in time, but as of right now, I think it's good that they just stay with Flacco. And if he's like terribly struggling, then they could put Jackson in. But I think he's still a bit underdeveloped to be starting for an NFL franchise. Next, I have the Browns in third place in the division. I think that they'll be around 7-9 to 8-8. Some people might think this is too low or too high. I think that this is pretty realistic. I like the acquisitions of Tyrod Taylor, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield I thought was okay. I don't know. I feel like they could have gotten someone much better at that pick, but I don't want to say wasted it, but it was a reach to get him that high. But it's just good that they got a new young quarterback who's willing to go there and not dreading playing for the franchise and wants to succeed in Cleveland, which is, I think, just what they really want. I liked that they got Jarvis Landry. Denzel Ward, I think, was a good pickup at cornerback in the draft. Yeah, you know, I think that they just brought in a lot of good new talent, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. They brought in Carlos Hyde at running back, and they drafted Nick Chubb to play running back for them as well. I think that'll be a good combination. I think that Chubb is a little bit bigger, and he sort of is a little bit like Carlos Hyde in that they're both bigger backs, so he can learn from him too, and they can stagger when each of them plays to be effective. So yeah, the Browns are looking up, I think. And I have the Bengals in last place in this division, but I don't foresee them being terrible. I see them as about 6-10, so not terrible, but by no means good. They're just kind of a stale team. They still have Marvin Lewis. They didn't really do anything to improve themselves besides, their draft pick, which I don't know. I just don't see them moving the needle overall much as a team. Okay, so moving on to the AFC East, I have the Patriots as number 1. I think that's pretty obvious. I don't think any of these other teams are ready yet or competent enough to overtake them. They'll probably finish around 12-4, I'm thinking. A good standard Patriots season. Maybe 11-5. I think that the Patriots will be slightly worse because of losing all their coordinators. They lost Matt Patricia as their coordinator. Julian Edelman will be suspended. They lost a lot of players who maybe aren't their best players, but just a lot of notable players like Dion Lewis. They lost. A few other guys have been going on defense. They don't have Rob Ninkovich anymore, who I really liked when he was in his prime. He was a good player, and they don't have him anymore. So it's sort of a transition year. It'll be interesting to see how things work out for them, but I think it will be intriguing. I have the Dolphins in second place. I'm predicting about 7-9 to 8-8, depending on how well Ryan Tannehill plays. But really, I don't really know. I don't expect too much. But 7-9, I think, is fair enough, reasonable. And if they really thrive, about an 8-8 record. Third place, I have the Jets, who I think will be 6-10 or 7-9. If Sam Darnold really adapts well to the NFL, I think 7-9 is pretty reasonable for them. They really aren't as bad of a team as anyone thought. They were about, I think, 5-11 or 6-10 last year, which is decent. I think they will take a slight step forward, but the results won't be as prominent as they might be in 2 years from now or maybe 3 years from now when they get more talent around Sam Darnold. But he is a really solid guy. I think he's going to be another sort of like not an improved Carson Wentz, but just another a guy who's molded in the image of Carson Wentz, I should say. So I think he'll be a really good, young, solid quarterback for them. And in last place, I have the Buffalo Bills. I don't really think they'll be bad. I think they'll be around 6-10, which isn't terrible. It's not good, but not terrible. There's just, again, sort of like the Bengals, nothing popping about this team. They're stale, I think. Yes, they did get to the playoffs last year, but I really liked Tyrod Taylor as their quarterback. They don't have him anymore. They did get Josh Allen, but I really don't think that he's going to pan out that well for them. I think that playing in I don't know what conference it was, like the Big Mountain Conference or something, is not adequate compared to playing against NFL defenses. So I don't think they'll play much this year. They did say that they're going to start Nathan Peterman week 1, who is infamous for throwing 6 picks in one game. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't see that. They have a decent defense, but I don't even remember who their running back is, but I don't think that he would be good enough to shoulder the weight of an offense for them. So we'll just have to wait it out and see how they perform. But I don't think very well is my assumption. The next team I have on here the next division is the AFC South. So I see the Jaguars as being the best team in this division, and I think best case scenario they could finish with about 14 wins, and worst case scenario maybe about 12 and maybe 11. But I think that they will be about 13-3 or 14-2. I just think that they have the best defense in the NFL. I think that they have a really good running back in Leonard Fournette. I think that their only weakness is that they lost Allen Robinson at wide receiver, but they still have some decent guys. Marquise Lee, I think he still plays for them. He's out for the season, but I just think that their defense is going to overwhelm people, and much like it did last year, it was the number 2 defense in the NFL. And I think they're just going to continue to build. I think Blake Bortles will take minute steps forward, which is what they need, and they will really succeed. I have the Texans in here as the next team. I predict them being about 8-8 or 9-7, maybe even 10-6 if Deshaun Watson doesn't show any rust in coming back. A really strong defense. They'll have J.J. Watt. They'll have Jadeveon Clowney, and the rest of the team. The rest of the defense is decent. So with those two stars and the rest of the defense, they'll do pretty well. The offense should be a lot better with Watson back. Lamar Miller, I still like a lot. DeAndre Hopkins is really good. Will Fuller is really good. So that should be a pretty good team. They just need to upgrade some of their average players to good players, and they could take a big step forward in the years ahead. Next team I have on here is the Titans. They're sort of in the same mold to me as the Bills and the Bengals. I see them as being sort of stale. If Marcus Mariota comes back healthy, they could be better than I'm predicting them, but I see them as an 8-8 team. Mariota played injured a lot last year, so that explains why he didn't do as well as he normally does, but I just think that with losing DeMarco Murray, he isn't like the lifeblood of the team, but I just don't know if Dion Lewis will be able to take over as a full-time back. Derrick Henry, I don't know if he'll be able to play full-time back. And with a shaky Mariota and no definitive full-time back, I'm really nervous about this offense. No more Kendall Wright either, who is one of their mainstays as a wide receiver the past couple of years. So we'll just have to wait and see how they do. Last place I have the Colts, who I picture being about 6-10 or 7-9. I think that Luck will come back and be pretty good, but not great. I think that it'll take him this season. He'll kind of be getting the rust off, and then next year he'll really be back to his normal self, but it'll take time. They don't have a good defense, so I don't predict them to be good on that side of the ball. But with Andrew Luck under center, you're always going to be okay and you're going to have a chance, is what I'm trying to say. I could not think of the phrase. And so for the AFC West, as my last division in the AFC, I have the Chargers at number 1. I like this Chargers team a lot. Phillip Rivers still gunning under center, good as always. Melvin Gordon, a good wide running back, I should say. Keenan Allen, good wide receiver. One of the top wide receivers in the league. And a defense with Joey Bosa and Casey Hayward I like a lot. And they still have Corey Liuget and a few other good pieces. And I think they're going to be pretty solid. And I'd say around 10-6 is what I think for this team. Maybe 11-5 if they really outdo themselves. The next team I have on this for the West is the the Chiefs, who I think will be about 9-7, 10-6 if Patrick Mahomes is really on his game. I think that Patrick Mahomes will struggle early on. He has a huge cannon of an arm, maybe the strongest arm in the NFL, like him and Stafford as the 1 and 2. But I think it'll take him some time to adjust to playing live NFL defenses during the regular season, like any rookie. But I think he'll do all right, and they'll still be a decent team overall. And they might eke into. I think that they could get into the playoffs possibly. The next team I have on here is the Raiders, who I'm seeing as about a 7-9 team. I don't like that they trade Khalil Mack. I think they really should have worked a lot harder to retain him and not trade him to the Bears. I don't like that they got Gruden. I don't think that Gruden will be a good head coach for them. I think he's been out of the league too long, and I think even when he was in the league, he wasn't that good of a coach. And I don't know. I just am not sold on them. I like Derek Carr, but he wasn't as good as everyone thought he would be last year. And their defense, frankly, isn't good. So you combine those two things, and I don't see them winning the division at all or anything. The last team I have on here is the Broncos, who I see as a 6-10 team. A really bad offense last year, and I don't see them improving much this year. I think Case Keenum will be all right for them. I'm from Minnesota, so I like the Vikings, but I think that Case Keenum was a bit of a one-year wonder and won't really repeat his performance. I think that he really benefited from the offense he was in last year, and he's more of a result of the system he played in rather than his individual talent. Because before that, he was a very mediocre NFL quarterback, so I don't see him thriving in Denver. I see him being all right, sort of like how Brock Osweiler did when he played for them, just like an all right guy. And the defense is good, but you need a good offense to be legit in the NFL, I think, or at least a few major offensive weapons, which they don't really have. Now switching over to the NFC, in the Northern Division, I see the Vikings being the top team, maybe at around 11-5. I like them a lot. I still think they'll have about the #1 defense or #2, and at worst like #4 defense in the NFL. Still got a lot of great players on that side: Everson Griffin, Harrison Smith, Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks. You know, they've still got a lot of talented guys on that side of the ball. Who am I thinking of? The guy opposite, Everson Griffin, who's a really good defensive end as well. I can't think of his name right now, but he is very talented. So those two guys combined to just annihilate defenses last year, and I think they'll continue to do the same. Offense still really good. I like the Kirk Cousins addition. I think that it will help them improve. I think that Case Keenum did really well last year, so I'm going to say offensively they're only going to be marginally better, because I don't think that Kirk Cousins would be that much better than Keenum was last year. But still, I think that he's more talented, so that'll help them. In second place, I have the Packers at about 10-6. I see good things for them. I think that having Rodgers back for a full year will obviously help them a lot. But the reason I don't have them winning this division is I don't see a ton of talent besides Rodgers on this roster. You know, obviously there's good players. Randall Cobb's really good. You know, there's Ty Montgomery's good. But I just they just don't pop. He doesn't have a premier target on offense. They have Jimmy Graham, but Jimmy Graham hasn't been relevant in the NFL since 2013. So there's that. We'll just have to see. You know, maybe they'll come out and give us a performance where they're 12-4 and they shock us all. But I think that'll take Rodgers a small amount of time to get back in his groove. And I think that when you basically are a one-man team, which is I think what the Packers are, it sounds really harsh, but that's what I think. I think it's really hard to succeed at a Super Bowl level. Next, I have the Lions in this division. I think they'll be about 7-9 to 8-8, which they always are. The Lions are just one of those ho-hum teams. They're never going to be great. They're never going to be bad. Stafford's under center, still doing good. They still don't have a running game. They have some decent wide receivers in Marvin Jones Jr. and Golden Tate, and basically the same team there, except Matt Patricia's the head coach. I don't think that he being there will improve them greatly or make them significantly worse. Just about the same level of production. And the Bears in last place, I see them being 5-11, again, repeating at 5-11. I think that getting Khalil Mack is great for them. I don't think he moves the needle a ton. I think Trubisky really needs to still continue to grow to be improving their team. So we'll have to see if he improves significantly from last year, but I still think that this team is about 2 years away from being relevant in the NFL. Let's see here. The next team I have is, or division I should say, is the NFC East, which I have the Eagles winning at about 12-4 or 13-3. I think they'll be very good. I'm going to say 12, more like 12-4, but I'm not going to say for sure because you never know depending on how Wentz comes back. But they're still a great defense, probably one of the top 3 you'd say in the NFL, top 4. And still got a lot of good offensive weapons with Ertz and let's see here. They got Jay Ajayi at running back and still some decent wide receivers, so I still see some good things for them. I have at second place the Cowboys, who I think will be about 9-7. I think they'll really improve from Zeke coming back, but I think that the Eagles have just really emerged as the best team in this division. The Cowboys' offensive line is a bit weaker, so they're not going to repeat their 13-3 success of 2016. So 9-7 I think is fair. They'll repeat their record from last year. And be this the second place team that's kind of not much to talk about with them. The Giants I think will improve to a record of probably somewhere at about 7-9 or 8-8. I really like the Saquon Barkley addition. It's just what they need with Eli getting older, a reliable guy to hand it off to. I think he'll have a stupendous year, and I think that they still have a really solid defense, so I don't think that this is a bad team whatsoever. It's a team that's retooling, There's a difference between retooling and rebuilding. They're not. I don't want to say they're rebuilding. I'd say they're retooling by getting the high pick in Saquon Barkley, much like the Cowboys retooled when they got Ezekiel Elliott. And in last place in the division, I have the Redskins at about 6-10, maybe 7-9. They by no means will be a bad team. I think they'll be very similar to last year. Kind of like Alex Smith and Kirk Cousins, I think are like similar levels of talent as far as quarterbacks go. So I don't see that like a big drop off or a big improvement. I like Alex Smith slightly more, but he is older, so I think that plays a part in them being basically equal talents. Next, the NFC South. I have the Saints winning this division. I think that they will be. I'm gonna say that they're gonna repeat at 11-5, maybe 12-4 if they just light it up. I think that they'll be about the same exact team as they were last year. Really dynamic on offense, lots of threats. Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram after he comes back from the suspension. Old, reliable, and Drew Brees always whipping it downfield like a pro. Not a pro, but like a superstar. And the defense is still decent, so I see them winning this division. Second place, I have the Falcons at, I would think, around 10-6 is my tentative prediction. Still the solid core from last year. Not going to like be great. Not going to fall off a lot. Pretty similar roster. Still got Julio. Still got Matt. Still got the dual running backs. I still like them as a playoff caliber team. Next team in this division, the Panthers, I see as being around 9-7. I see them falling off a little bit. I feel like there's just a ton of inconsistencies with this team, and you never know where you're going to get week to week. And I think like last year was like their on year where they played well. And I think this year will be their off year. Like they did really well in 15, they did bad in 16, they did well in 17. I think this will be more of a down year. They'll be 9-7, which is decent, but a little bit worse than usual. And in last place, I have the Buccaneers, who I see being, depending on the Jameis Winston situation, I don't know, but I'll just say between 4-12 and 6-10. 6-10 if they just overperform a ton. 4-12 if they perform how I expect. I think they'll be a bad team. Mike Evans is like the bright spot of the team, but just overall they don't have it going for them really. And in the NFC West, I have the Rams at number 1. I think they'll be 13-3. I think that they could possibly have the best record in the NFL this year. I think they have the equivalent of a super team in the NFL, at least on the defensive side of the ball. But on offense, they got a lot of weapons too. They have Todd Gurley. They have a decent wide receiving core. So I don't see why they couldn't be a really good team in the NFL and go really far in the playoffs. They had a taste of it last year. They were 11-5 and lost in the first round. But I think this is the year they're really coming to their own and kind of start owning the NFL. Or not owning the NFL, but establishing themselves as like a NFL team for years to come. I have the Seahawks in second place at 8-8. I think that they'll be all right, but they lost a lot of defensive players, and really the lone bright spot of the team is Russell Wilson. Not much of a running game. Wide receivers, they got Doug Baldwin, who's decent, but still, like, I'm not sold. They don't have Cliff Averill anymore. No more Michael Bennett. No more Cam Chancellor. No more Richard Sherman. Earl Thomas wants out. That's all bad signs for them as far as defense. The Legion of Boom is no more, and I'd say that their other best defensive player who was on Legion of Boom, which is Michael Bennett, is gone. So they're not looking great in my opinion. 49ers I have at 7-9. I think that they will take a small step forward from last year. I think that Jimmy G was sort of lightning in a bottle. I think that he'll be a decent, good NFL player, but I don't think he'll be the superstar that he was sort of appearing to be at the end of last year. I think that he's like the football equivalent of Jeremy Lin, like Lin Sanity, or maybe a more apt NFL comparison would be Vince Young or Tim Tebow or Robert Griffin III. All these guys that in their first season or part of a season, they did really well. But it's mainly because NFL teams don't really know how they play, but once they get studied, they just come back down to earth and they're more average. I think Jimmy G will be like a good starting quarterback, maybe like top 15 in the NFL, but not amazing. So 7-9 I think is pretty fair for them. They still don't have a ton of talent around them. And I see the Cardinals being in last place. I think that they will be the worst team in the NFL. I could see them being as bad as 3-13 even. I don't really see any team where I'm like, yeah, I think that they could beat them. And when I look over all these teams in the NFL, maybe like a team like the Bears, they'd have a good shot against, but they're just dilapidated in my opinion. I like David Johnson, but quarterback is a mess for them, I think, and Larry Fitzgerald is still a reliable guy, but I think on his last legs. And defense, they got Chandler Jones, but I don't know. I'm just not sold on them as a team, really. So there you have it, guys. That's my prediction of all the standings for this upcoming 2018 NFL season. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree and tell me why, and I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. As I say, I usually do NBA stuff, but I am a huge NFL fan as well and get really into it during the NFL season. I'll probably post some more videos regarding the NFL after this part 2, where I'm going to talk about the playoff predictions and my award predictions. So yeah, that's a bit of what's to come. And yes, I will be posting part 2 of this 2018 NFL season preview. So stay tuned for that shortly. Bye.